I'm Amy Dolan, and this is the Feeding People podcast. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Feeding People podcast. I'm Amy Dolan, your host. Thrilled to be with you for another episode here on the podcast. I'm really excited for you to hear the conversation that I had with today's guest, Rudy Garrett. Rudy is the co-deputy director of an organization called Chicago Votes. And recently we went to Rudy's office right here in Chicago to record our conversation together. Chicago Votes is a really, really cool organization. They are nonpartisan, and they focus on empowering young people to get involved in local politics. Most of their initiatives are rooted in voter registration, voter education, and voter action, and I just love what they do. Last year, I learned about Chicago Votes and was so moved by the work that they're doing in Chicago that I got involved myself. I went to all their trainings and was able to learn more about their program specific to the Cook County Jail programs here, in which they help people register to vote and get involved in elections. And more increasingly for me, I'm trying to connect my faith with politics and specifically the ways that I can advocate for myself and for my neighbor. And so I just love that Chicago Votes helped me to learn some new things and get involved. When I learned about Rudy and her passion for food and her desire to go to culinary school, which is what first brought her to Chicago, and then her journey towards politics and feeding people, specifically feeding the staff and volunteers at Chicago Votes who are doing really good and important work, I just knew I had to meet her and sit down and learn more about the role of food, specifically in politics and activism. As I talked with Rudy, I was very mindful of people and organizations in my own neighborhood who are doing really good and important work, and I was thinking a lot about how I could feed them. They need food to keep doing their work. And so this week, I'm really going to think about who I can feed in my neighborhood and how I can encourage their really good work through food. And I'd encourage you to do the same. As you're listening to the episode today and you're listening to Rudy's words, consider the organizations in your own community who are working hard for others, and consider how you can make them a meal, bring them food, order them food, send them a gift card, really anything, so that they have the food and the nourishment that they need to keep going. Here is my conversation with Rudy Garrett. I hope that you enjoy. Hi, Rudy.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. I'm so excited to be here with you at this beautiful table. This is really a lovely table.
Thanks. Our small, scrappy nonprofit couldn't do any better.
So we're here at Chicago Votes. You're the co-deputy director. And I love when we were setting up this interview, you told me that you might be running late because you were coming back from prison.
Yes.
That's not like a common email that I get. And so how was your day at prison?
My day at prison was wonderful. Chicago Votes takes part in a think tank that's hosted by DePaul University's Inside Out program with Stateville. So they have students that are both traditional students and folks who are experiencing incarceration, and they come together to create a variety of think tanks. We work with the Voting Rights think tank. I don't get to go as often as everybody else does, but this was a special day where I got to go because we are finishing up some curriculum work. We passed a piece of legislation this past session, affectionately known as Civics in Prison, and it brings peer-led civic education courses to all of the departments of the correction. So when folks leave, they have an opportunity to get some basic civic education courses. When they come back into their communities, they know how to jump right back in. So we always like to get input from the guys at Stateville before we pass anything along. So it was really cool to meet with the guys and check in with them and get their feedback.
How cool. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I love Chicago Votes. I think it was last year I heard about you and I signed up to be a volunteer. And what's so hilarious to me is that I've just spent my life and my career working in churches where I manage volunteers. And I've discovered through Chicago Votes, I'm actually the worst volunteer.
I don't believe that's true, but I'll let you make your case.
I mean, like, I feel like I'm the volunteer I used to hate. Right? Like, I did all the trainings. I asked a million questions. Oh my gosh. And then like when it was actually time to show up and do the work, I was like, oh, my schedule. Right? So anyway, I love the work y'all are doing. It's so, so good. Would you just introduce yourself and introduce us to Chicago Votes?
Sure. Well, I'm Rudy Garrett. I'm one of our co-deputy directors here at Chicago Votes. I've been here for about 5 years now. And the work that we do is we engage young people in hyperlocal politics. We try to get young people more engaged in electoral and legislative processes and meet young people where they're at to create a new culture of politics where they can engage more freely and more openly and feel like politics represents them. So that's the basis of what we do. We do that through our main programs, which is our Unlock Civics program, which you're really familiar with. Cook County Joe Votes was first born in 2017. It's grown into like a multifaceted program that includes our work in Stateville Prison, our work in the Cook County Jail, and then our legislative efforts in Springfield as well. We also run our Parade to the Polls program, which is our high school, college, and communities program where we try to create hyper-local civic celebrations to increase voter turnout, specifically youth voter turnout in elections. And then also our Give a Shit, which is our newest and most exciting program where we bring together young people to host happy hours to talk about issues that matter to them and to talk about things that they give a shit about. So
it's incredible work, Rudy.
It's a lot of work,
but it's
really, really, really important work for us.
It's really important. And just like as a citizen of Chicago, thank you so much for all that you do for this city.
I appreciate that. We don't hear people say thank you so much for doing. Like thank you
really
for understanding how important it is.
Yeah, it's really important. I'm really grateful. Thank you. So, do you have time for fun? What do you do for fun?
Personally, I love cooking myself. I love cooking and baking. That's always been something that I have loved. It's been passed down to me from down my family. So I do that. I also I try to stay healthy. I wouldn't say I'm an athlete. I wouldn't say I'm like very good at sports, but I like to work out and I try to keep my body as healthy as I possibly can when I'm not working.
Yeah, that's great. So, okay, what you said you love food. Of course, we're going to get to this.
Obviously,
I'm so excited to talk about the connection between food and activism, food and politics, food and resistance. I mean, all of it. There's so much to say. I'm really excited. But let's start with the most important question. What is the best meal you've ever had?
And I'm sure everyone's like, how could you ask me that?
Right.
It's so rude. Like, I've eaten so much food in my life.
Everyone's usually like, can I say 5? And I'm like, sure.
Absolutely. For me, it's more so like you get a specific kind of feeling when you're having a meal that's really great with really great people and a really great moment. And those are that sensation is kind of what I strive for.
Yeah.
And one of the first times I can remember having that is like a family meal where, bless my family, I love them, but some folks were stronger cooks than others. Yeah. But one meal that my family always could get down on was meatloaf. Yes, I'm a Midwestern girl from Indiana. So like the meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and like insert random vegetable, could be corn, could be green beans here. But when I think about home and I think about growing up and coming together in those rare moments, like meatloaf mashed potatoes with ketchup.
Okay.
That's what I think of as one of my favorite meals. And I'd say that in a beautiful food city like Chicago and feel like I'm being super disrespectful. But
I was going to say you're the first person who said meatloaf as their best meal, but I love that. It is about the feeling that you get together and the memory that it brings back, right?
And it's just like a good old homey thing
really
to
is.
make.
If you don't feel full and satisfied after meatloaf, I mean, what are you doing?
I mean, you did it wrong.
Yeah,
you absolutely did it wrong. If you don't feel satiated, filled, and warm, then you didn't do it right.
Okay, so you mentioned growing up in Indiana. What was food like for you as a kid? Did you cook with your family? Did you go out for meals? What was it like?
I had the normal I was obsessed with McDonald's. Like little kids love McDonald's or like
a Happy Meal.
Absolute Happy Meal. But I looked like a little boy because my family kept my hair cut real short. So I'd go up to McDonald's and they would give me the boy toy and I'd be like, I really want the girl toy. Also, sometimes I'd be cool with the boy toy because gender socially constructed. So who cares? But I'd be like, I'm here for this My Little Pony. That's why I'm here. Here for the My Little Pony. Why won't you give it to me? But when they distracted me from the McDonald's, my father was the main cook in the family. So he grew up grew up in Kentucky to like a poor Black family. So cooking and being in the kitchen was something that was handed down to him by his mother. He was one of two. So like spending time with parents was really important. And because they didn't have babysitters or anything of that nature, like spent a lot of time in the kitchen with his mom helping. So I, in turn, spent a lot of time in the kitchen with my dad helping for the brief time that I did have with them. Both my parents passed away when I was 10 and 11, so I didn't get a lot of like mom-dad time. But I did get most of the memories I do have of my father is in the kitchen cooking. Like I remember the first time he let me try Crisco. He was like, I was like, what's that? White stuff. Gosh. And he's like, it's Crisco, try it. And I he's like, just stick your finger in and try it, because he knew it would be gross. And so he had me do it. And I was like, that's disgusting. He's like, yeah, I'll never do that again. So and that's what it was like being in the kitchen with my dad. He was very much so like hands-on, try this. Like, this is how you make it taste like this. Sometimes it was just like very quiet, like me watching and asking questions. And other times he's like, I need you to go do this, and not knowing that he's teaching me how to do it. And the next time he's not home and I want to make eggs, like, oh yeah, I remember he taught me how to do that. So that's what growing up for me was like, cooking in the kitchen with my dad.
That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. And since losing him, is that a way that you're able to connect with him? Like remember him and his spirit by...
Very much so. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's one thing that my family remembers of him. They're like, oh, when I come home or he knew I was coming over, he'd always fix a plate and keep it in the oven to keep it warm for me. So everybody knew that about him. And so it's one of those things where like, when I can provide for my friends and family, and like if someone's sick and I can make them some food, or I have extras left over and I can bring it into the office and everybody can heat up something that was like made at home for lunch, like that to me, like that's a value that he taught me of like, you show people you love them by making sure they have something to eat. So that's a value that I still hold very close to me today. And like a good Midwestern woman in a crisis, you make a casserole, right?
Absolutely.
So
that's so beautiful. I obviously didn't know your dad, but I feel like what a beautiful like extension of him and expression of him that you can put out into the world. That's so lovely.
I definitely don't think I cook like him, because he definitely is like that Southern cook, and I'm not out here with all the butter and the Crisco, but I feel the energy and the sentiment on a daily basis when I do cook for myself and others.
Yeah, especially I love what you said about the warm food, that he kept it warm for you, that was such a value, right? And so it's almost like as you're offering food that's warm, it's an extension of him too. It's
absolutely
really beautiful.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk about how you got here today. So you came to Chicago for culinary school. So I did. Walk us through this. How did you go from like tasting Crisco,
right, and be like, that's gross, to like, I work in politics now. I tasted Crisco, now I'm in politics. Isn't that clear? No. So I grew up in Indianapolis. My parents passed away when I was rather young, and I moved in with my aunt and uncle. And from there, we had a lot of political conversations. That's a very normal thing in my family to talk about. And as a young person, I just like I don't know anything about those things. So I sat very quiet in those spaces and didn't really know how to engage. And I always wanted to be able to engage, but just had like no idea what they were talking about. And I hated that othering feeling. So I actually had the extreme privilege of going to a boarding school for high school. And there, I got to get into speech and debate. Well, not really debate, it was discussion. So I got into this space where I would get up at 4 a.m., dress up in like adult business clothes, get on a bus and drive to a local high school to literally sit in a room like this and have a discussion around like nonprofits in America, or like how to solve issues in sub-Saharan Africa with other students like that. Talking about those issues, I was like, I'm like willing to do this in class and outside of class. Like that's weird, but I also really enjoy it. It's not something I'm adverse to, because I feel like I don't fit into the conversation. I feel like I fit in the conversation here. And that was really important to me. But I couldn't really isolate why until it was when I graduated from high school, and I was making my intentions of like, I'm going to college. This is what I want to study. I think I should be a political science major. And my family was like, oh no, you can't do that. You'll become evil. All politicians are evil. So you're going to go, every person goes in good and comes out bad. Do you want that to happen to you? And I'm like, well, no, but like, I don't want to stop having these conversations and feeling like my voice is valued in that space. And so it wasn't until like I went to college and then took a poli-sci class, and it was just over for me. It was compared to Democratic states, and I was sold, and I declared my major as a freshman. Like, I'm a poli-sci major. That's just what it is. My family was not happy with it, but I was very happy with my decision. I was loving what I was learning in school. It was very awesome. I realized that my values were a little bit different as I got older. Like some of the things like gay marriage would come up in conversation, and I identify as a lesbian now. Then I didn't know how to hold my own in a conversation like that. And so it added to this othering feeling I had when I would sit in rooms with adults and have political conversations. But when I was in school, when I was at college, I could have these conversations and feel really valued. Yeah. So fast forward, I graduate from college, and I'm like, all right, I've given politics its due diligence. I've also loved cooking my whole life. I did the normal. I started out watching Paula Deen, then Rachel Ray, then Giada. Like I just like would.
That is the track.
I would go through.
You're like, that's like the Food Network school of cooking.
In my free time, I would read cookbooks. I'd go to Barnes and Noble and read that all day when I wasn't doing homework. And I was like, I gave politics its due diligence in college. Let me go to school for cooking. So I applied to Le Cordon Bleu here in Chicago and got in and was like, all right, great. I just need to move to Chicago, find a day job because I can't take out any more federal loans to cover another bachelor's degree. So like I'll get a job and make it work and figure it out and go to culinary school by night. So I moved to Chicago and like tried and fought tooth and nail to get a stable job during the day so I could start putting money aside to go to school and go to school at night. So I jump around from job to job, and I did settle down at working at a law firm, and it was actually one of the largest foreclosure firms in Illinois, and I didn't really know what that meant, but I was like, politics, law, similar, kind of, but then I actually realized what foreclosure law is when you are on the side of the banks and how damning it is to people and how damaging it is to families and communities, and realized like, oh, I can't just do any job during the day. And that was the first time I was like, okay, politics is coming back into my face again. Like, now, all of a sudden, because of this, like the values I have in community and people, I feel like I can't work here anymore. So I need to find something. So I went to where all millennials go to find like the good people jobs. I went to Idealist and typed in like politics Chicago and search, and just went through the gamut of job descriptions until I found organizing director, like I mentioned before, at this like nonprofit called Chicago Votes. And I was like, this seems basic. I get it. Chicago Votes, young people, they mention it a lot in the job description. And organizing, like I work at a law firm, my closet's color coordinated, my paper clips and binder clips do not mix. So like I'm going to be this perfect person to work at this nonprofit. I'm going to organize this nonprofit for them. And they're like, you have no idea what organizing is, but you like politics. You are a young person. Like this could be a good fit for you. You should be an intern though. Like you shouldn't be a director here yet.
How did that feel?
Whatever. Yeah. Okay. I was looking for a job, but like, I guess I'll try it. And this place completely changed my perspective on politics. And so that's kind of how I found serendipitously my new home and the start to my career.
Amazing. Oh my gosh.
It's a very weird ride and I'm still on it.
But I mean, isn't that life?
It is.
Right?
Very
like,
much
I feel
so.
like for
Absolutely.
all of us, it's like, I always want life to be like, I'm here and I want to go there, so let's go. And it's never that, right?
It's never that. It's like, I might want to go this way or I could go this other way. I don't know.
And also like when I'm here and I want to go there, there's like 500 winding roads from here to there.
Absolutely.
And I actually hate that about life, but it makes for the most beautiful story when you do arrive at different destinations, right? And you're like, oh, okay, right. Like, that was kind of rough, but like, all right. Here we are.
If I could do it again, I might take this route instead of that one. But like you live and you learn, and maybe I can pass this on to somebody else who won't go that way. They'll go this way with me.
So I think it's really beautiful that you've always loved cooking. You've always loved food. You make food out of love for the people in your life. And now you're in this like fantastic career where you are in politics and using your degree. And so how would you describe like the combination of both things for you? Like, how have you noticed like those passions of yours coming together? Like, what does food mean to people when they're involved in activism, when they're trying to resist, when they're trying to vote? Like, okay, easy question, right?
I mean, and there's so many answers. There's so many ways to answer it. But for me, the first thing that comes to mind is like so many people are doing this work because it their survival depends on it.
Yes.
And like they are often putting off a lot of other like very vital things in their life to be a part of a movement, to like donate their time to an organization or a cause, or just start a campaign in their neighborhood. And like you saying, hey, I'm going to provide snacks at this meeting or a meal at this event. Like it's saying, I understand that you're sacrificing something to be here, and I want to meet that sacrifice and make sure that you have what you need so that you can do this work. Because far too often we find that like in this really interesting work culture that we have now, we expect young people to do internships and fellowships for free while you're in school,
work
or after
100 hours,
or afterwards when you're like, hi, you have a degree now and you need to be making money to provide for yourself. But instead, like the only way you can break into your industry is by doing a year-long internship for free. Like that just to me does not seem equitable, and that sets people back so far. So being able to provide things like food at events, food at your office, and provide meals for folks is a way of being like, I understand that you're sacrificing a lot just to be in this space with me, and I want to show that respect and love to you by at least providing something for you to eat, a little something, whether it be access to like clean water, access to food for just a meal, or just having snacks available. Like it's important because it shows that like, I know that you're sacrificing something to be here, and I want to make sure that you have your basic needs met.
Yeah, I love that. I forget that activism is so physical. And so, just food is required.
Yeah.
But then if you're able to provide beautiful food, or, food that's specific to people's likes and tastes and their culture, things like that, it's like, well, it's a physical need, and also like strength, right? Like
absolutely
emotional strength. Keep going, do what you need to do. Yeah.
And it's like, for me, it like deepens the relationship so much more. Like it's like a very like shameless turnout mechanism. If I know that people are on the fence about coming to a meeting I'm hosting, 100%. I'm like, what snacks do you want? They're like, well, I would really like it if we had mozzarella sticks. I was like, so great. When there's hot mozzarella sticks on this table and you're not here, like, we're going to have a problem, me and you.
Yes.
So like, it's like kind of an accountability thing too. Yes. A lot of organizers will use like, I'm so glad you're coming. Could you bring a case of water as a way to like bring people in, and like you're a part of this community too, providing for one another, something we do. So like we're in this together, so let's provide together.
So good. Okay, so you mentioned the staff here, and how do y'all like connect with food as a staff?
We like to eat a lot.
Yeah.
Like a lot. Chicago Votes has only been around for 7 years. We're 7 years old. And we've graduated over 179 young people from our leadership development programs.
Wow.
And our young people do some crazy, amazing work across the city. They founded their own nonprofits. They've ran for office and actually won. But one thing that we all notice is every team meeting, they're like, there's no snacks here?
Yeah.
And our staff like takes that super seriously. So whenever we have typically it's when we leave the office and go places, we will try to go to different stores and restaurants around the activity that we're doing. So for example, whenever we do voter registration or election work in the Cook County Jail, we go to El Milagro. I don't know if you've seen the tortillas. They're in most of the bodegas and grocery stores across the city, but also available in the Midwest too. It's one of the closest food restaurants to the jail. And you have a very quick amount of time to grab food when we're like, get a lunch break. So we always go there together as a group with any volunteers that are interested afterwards. Everybody just knows Chicago Vote staff is going to El Milagro, and you're welcome to join them just to like debrief the experience and just like share a meal together. Whenever we go to Stateville to engage in a think tank, we stop at Carrabba's. It's a long story, but one of our staff members, Jen, has lots of really fond memories as a young person that she was like, I love going to that restaurant and I'd love to bring that great energy to our staff. So and so we made that a tradition that we do now whenever we come back from Stateville, we stop by. And then also one of our favorites, and I'll say our executive director, Stevie Vias's favorite, is we stop at Cracker Barrel whenever we go to Springfield. So whenever we go down to the state legislature, no matter how good or how bad the day goes, we know we're stopping at the Cracker Cracker Barrel and getting the hash brown casserole, and everything's going to be okay. Like that's no matter how it went.
I love it. You always have that as like the end goal of the day.
Hash brown casserole. We know what's happening.
I mean, I hope we pass some good help with some good legislation, but also the casserole.
Hopefully we got some good sponsors, but also that casserole is coming. So we have those food traditions that just kind of happen, and we love creating new traditions. We always have pizza from Exchequer, which is a restaurant right next door here. It's like famously known as Al Capone's like famous hangouts. So like food traditions and going to specific Chicago-based restaurants that are just like known in those neighborhoods is something that's really important to us, because like our communities are important and we want to share those experiences with other folks, because people from all walks of life come and participate in our programs. Like we'll have different, I mean, it's harder to get on these lists. So like, as you know, getting in the jail is really difficult. So like celebrating, like we just did a thing in a place that this stuff doesn't happen in. And like, we just need to hold space for each other to debrief that and also share space and deepen our relationships. So the next time we go in, we have even deeper relationships with ourselves and can better provide services for folks.
I love this so much. Food is the great connector, right?
It really is.
It really is. And specifically when you're doing such important work and such hard work as a group, you literally need food to keep going. And you need traditions, right? It's almost like the food and the tradition serves again as like the memory to, okay, we're going to be okay, or we can keep going, or we're still in this together, right? Deepening the relationship. We can go again and try again tomorrow, right? It's so beautiful. And I love that. I want to think about like food traditions. I always want to be, especially when we're celebrating trying new places. And I think what you said was really like challenged me to think about the big things that I do in my life with the same groups of people and how we can have like the same food after each of those things.
But we do try a lot of new things. I will say that too. So we do have our like tried and trues. But like our happy hours, our Give a Shit happy hour program, we always try to host it at different bars and restaurants across the city to like be equitable to the different sides of the cities that we're serving. Like most events will be on the north side for most organizations, and we recognize like that's a comfortable area, but also like so many other spaces that can be uplifted, other communities to go to. So we will try to go to new places and bring folks to like cool new spots that they've never been to before, just to broaden people's horizons and perspectives. Because unfortunately, we live in one of the most segregated cities in the country, and like young people that we meet on the South Side have never been to Little Village before, just because their life hasn't afforded them the opportunity to be able to travel that freely across the city, or nothing's taken them there before. And so being able to just go to those new places, meet new people, and experience new things in a safe environment with people that you know you're doing good work with is also a huge value to us. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention like that's really important to us too. Going to new places and doing new stuff as well. Yeah.
So how would you say, I really believe food gives people power. Do you think that?
I do, in that I specifically think to the people who provide food. And especially in volunteer spaces, campaign spaces, like the folks that'll bring in like a home cooked meal, like that person holds a really special place in that community and space. Like the person who is the food provider, or the person who's always like making sure, like, did you get something to eat? Are you full? Like that person plays a really integral role, and often it's overlooked in a lot of spaces. And it's a role that anybody can play. So it's like really flexible and versatile. I love baking and cooking. So like I'm that person that will walk into a room of any age of folks and be like, I baked cookies, like who wants some? And it definitely like, it's a way for me to meet people. It's a connecting opportunity within a space for new people, but it's also like you're seen, I don't know if it's a leader, I don't know if that's the right way to say it or the terminology, but there's like an element of like leadership and power and being that person that can provide food for other people.
I really resonate with this, and I feel like I've never made that connection. I know when I make food, when I show up with food for people, I feel good. Right? But Right. Probably some of it is because I know I have the power. Like, I got the food. I got the power.
Like, here's what I'm contributing. And
Right.
it's just as valuable as like, because it reminds me to campaigns. Like campaigns, like you're going to ask people to knock doors. You're going to ask people to make phone calls for you. But it's also like being able to isolate who in the neighborhood can like make volunteer meals, who can come and donate food. And that's what they're, like that is seen as just as valuable as knocking on a door or making a call. And in campaign currency, that's very valuable, and it's a really empowering role. So I don't know if it's
so good
that like the natural aversion to the word power that a lot of people feel. I naturally feel that, but I'm like, no, like the grandmas in the room are the powerful ones because they're the ones that bring the food that everyone loves, that makes the volunteering worth it. So like the empowerment that person can bring to a space, to me, is where the power lies.
Amen to everything. Yes. At our church, at Sunday Supper Church, our chef who makes all the food, we actually call him our pastor chef because, and I just never made that connection. It's like I call him pastor chef because he pastors us through his food. Yeah. He's so thoughtful and intentional and makes beautiful food, and that's how we are cared for. But I've never made that connection between like the leadership and the power and all of that the grounding role. I love that you said that.
And you put it in the church context. I went to like youth group as a kid, and like I cannot tell you what half of like the messages were.
Exactly,
could not tell you. But I know when we had chili. Yes, I know that when we carol, we have like hot chocolate. Like, and I know the women who were in charge of providing those things. And so like some of the like women that mentored me religiously in that space, and then the women who provided the food, they were the most important though, especially if it's like monkey bread or like any baked good. It's very important. High priorities.
Okay, good. We're the same theologians. I want to ask you this question. You mentioned before about when you were younger and thinking about politics and how like you'd be at the table with your family and disagree. So I really believe in like the magic of the table, that like the table provides a really great space to be able to sit with people who disagree with you, right? Especially if you've got food because you're, eating delicious stuff, but you're sitting eye to eye, and you can like, so often we, when we're not sitting together with people, we can just make them out to be terrible in our minds, right? But when you're sitting at a table, it's like, I can see your humanity, I can see your beauty. And so like, even if we disagree, I'm here. I want to know, I want to listen, I want to understand. So what advice do you have advice for, like, how would you encourage people to, or if you would even encourage people to sit at tables, safe tables, of course, like do not sit at a table, right, with people who are unsafe. But like, how would you encourage people to go to tables and be present at tables with people they disagree with? What would you say? I was so fascinated when you said that earlier. Like, what would you say to that? Do you do that?
I do. Yeah. In my personal life, do I share meals with people I don't enjoy? Absolutely not. Yeah. To me, the eating experience is something that's important. Like when I'm feeding myself, not only is it like a selfless, it's selfish, it's self-interested, it's selfless. It's all of those things wrapped into one for me. From a Chicago Votes context, like when we have really tough conversations to have with folks, we do it over meals. Yeah. Almost every time. We also the majority of our staff is Peace Circle trained. So we use that framework as well to hold conversation, just like to create a structure so that your conversations don't get out of hand. Sure. But it's also always over food because it's, again, like we're entering into something that's uncomfortable and you're sacrificing some things, especially if it's during mealtime, like you're sacrificing to be here. The way that we can equalize this playing field is everybody has a plate in front of them. Yeah. And everybody has like, everything else might be uncomfortable, but we got some basic needs met and we're trying to meet you where you're at as a person, and everybody needs to eat. So like our toughest conversations we typically have with food present. So like I also didn't make that connection. I'm like, what's the toughest conversation I've ever had with somebody, like a political partner, where we had to like discuss our relationship and how it's going and like the ways that folks have been harmed before. Like, and we did it by, all right, well, first let's order lunch from Exchequer. That was the first thing. Like, well, first let's get some food. Yes. Let's get some food first. Cause like, let's have this meeting over lunch. Never dinner though. You don't have bad conversations over dinner, I don't think.
No. And what you said before was so good. It's like, what did you say? Selfish and self-interested.
Yeah.
Right. When you're eating for yourself, I would say sacred. Like for me, dinner is sacred.
Yeah. That's a good vibes only space.
Yes.
I feel I can't really say why though. I don't, but I just, to me, I don't also, I get romantic thoughts whenever I think of dinner, because you go on dates and you go to dinner dates. And if you go to like a dinner breakfast, you don't really like that person that much. It's like, this is a quick thing. I can say I have things to do after this, but like, what are you going to do after dinner?
No,
like
you're kind of trapped.
You're stuck. So like either it's a good dinner or it's a bad dinner.
Right.
So I think that's really funny that you mentioned that.
I love the idea of thinking though, like if it is good for you to go to meals or your life requires that you go to meals with people who disagree or you're going to have tough conversations with it, maybe consider the meals that are sacred or off limits or are just for you, good vibes only. That's such a cool way of thinking about it. Okay, so how do you have dinner parties? How do you feed people for fun?
I mean, the simplest ways I'll bake and I'll like either drop it off at their home or I do a lot of bringing food into the office. Yeah. Whenever I get the itch to bake, I don't want to keep it at my house because I don't need that much sugar in arm's reach. So I'll bake and bring it in. Yeah. So that's the quickest and easiest way. I don't have a big apartment, so I can't really host a lot of dinner parties. Though I do love hosting a good retreat at my house. Ooh. Big fan of that. But outside of that, like
a whole weekend thing?
Day-long thing. Oh, day-long. Again, sacred spaces. Ends at dinner. It's over. Go home.
We only know church retreats, which are like a whole weekend. Camping somewhere. So awesome.
Ooh, but outdoor cooking, that's a task, but also really fun to do.
Yeah,
absolutely. Haven't really mastered that yet.
Yeah. What do you eat when you're alone? This is like my new favorite question because it's like, I feel like it's like what people really, really like. And, you got no shame. You're not hiding, like.
You're at the house. No one can see you but your pets. And yes, your pet is judging you. I know my cat judges me. So I've been trying to be more thoughtful about what I put into my body and try to surround myself with healthy things, though it's very hard. So I'll call it 50% of Olivia Pope dinner. Okay. I'm not really a big drinker. Okay. But she does the popcorn and wine.
Right. And the giant wine glass.
Yes. I do have a giant wine glass, but I'm not a big drinker, so I don't know why I have it. I guess it's just for show. I like the concept. I liked Olivia Pope. She has it.
She had it in her whole hand, the whole glass just sat in her hand.
I really think she must have a tiny hand.
Yeah, probably.
Kerry Washington must have really small palms. Right. That's my theory. Because that could be an IKEA wine glass, girl, and your hand's just really small. But I don't know what about. I also just loved the show, but also I love popcorn. Yeah. And one of my friends actually showed me how to make popcorn super simply, not buying it from the bag, just 2 teaspoons in a paper bag, roll it up, put it in the microwave, 2 minutes. You have popcorn.
This is my every night snack.
Me too. And so I've gotten really into doing the olive oil and salt on mine. So I have a rosemary oil. Get them at Mariano's.
Great idea.
Surprisingly well priced for a infused oil. Fun fact. And so I'll do rosemary oil and sea salt and shake it up. And
Yum.
I do not want to admit how much popcorn I eat. Just know it's a regular basis. Very regular.
You are preaching to the choir. Kelly, every night? I feel like one night I didn't have popcorn and Kelly was totally thrown off.
Something's wrong with her. I'm going to have to check in.
Am I calling 911? Where are we at? What's happening? Are we getting divorced? Is a really hard conversation coming?
What's going? Oh no.
I do a little bit of vegan butter and nutritional yeast.
Everyone keeps talking about this nutritional yeast. Clearly needs to get on the train.
It's really good on popcorn because it gives you a cheesy, salty. Yeah, it's really good. But I'm going to try your rosemary olive oil. I really like that idea.
I love it, especially if you grow herbs at home. That's a real quick, easy fix.
Yeah.
Adds a lot of flavor to anything that you're doing. And plus you get that essential oil boost.
So good.
So that's what I'd be doing at the house.
I love it. I love this question is so fun because it's like, what would you eat when you're alone? But like, please share on the podcast so that everyone can hear.
It's a really huge secret. Everyone's going to know.
So now you got to go home and like,
don't Google me.
Do that
Please
anymore.
Don't Google me. I don't need you to know. It's a secret, guys. Shh.
Okay, Rudy, where must people eat in Chicago?
That is like not fair. Well, I shouted out some of my Chicago Votes favorites. So El Milagro, Los Camales, Slab on the South Side, which is a barbecue spot on 71st Street in South Shore.
We gotta check that out.
Awesome, like small family business. But I have a huge sweet tooth, as in all of my teeth are sweet teeth and take up the whole mouth. I love Margie's.
Who does only have one sweet tooth? That's a good point.
I meet a lot of guys who are like, I don't really like chocolate. Like sweets aren't really my thing. But I actually have met quite a few male-identified folks who are like, sweets just aren't my thing. I like a salty thing. I like chips. I'm about that.
I really feel like I wouldn't trust someone. Anyway.
True.
But.
Honest.
Okay, where did you say?
Margie's candies.
Margie's, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. What'd you get?
I really love their coconut ice cream. Mm-hmm. Huge fan. So I'll usually like get the Coco Loco because I just love their like super, super rich hot fudge and their coconut ice cream. I'm also a sucker for a salted nut on top of my sundaes. Yes. I love the little wafer cookies they put in there. And it's in a giant clamshell.
Oh my gosh, everything.
And also the space looks like your grandma's house, smells like your grandma's house. So like and it's all like antique things. So I literally feel like I'm going back in time and sitting in my grandparents' like tiny little farmhouse and like eating unnecessary amounts of ice cream. So I love it. And so obviously it's a giant candy shop too. So not only do they do have some food items, but they have a bunch of ice cream and then they have like in-house candy shop.
Basically.
So like you come for the ice cream, you leave with at least a dozen truffles. So I don't know what you're doing. It's awesome.
That's a really great recommendation. Okay, Rudy, I could talk to you all day. This has been really fun and really great. I appreciate all the work that you're doing. Please keep going. Please keep going. I'm going to bring you food because I want you to keep going. Let's finish the show with a parting piece of guidance or, just some encouragement for our listeners. Like, what do you want to say to people about being active, voting, and then feeding each other as we do that?
Yeah. I feel like far too often, so many folks have reasons why they don't vote, personal experiences that are super valid or needs in their lives that stand in their way of engaging in that process. And like, no, voting isn't the be all end all that's going to be the change. Like it's the first step towards what we need to start engaging our communities and making sure the people who are in power have our best interests at heart and are listening and are given the space to take accountability for the promises that they make to the communities. So like voting is that first step that I encourage everybody to take to join this larger movement to building the community in the world that we want to see. And the way that you do that is through making sure people can join that movement with you. And at Chicago Votes, during programs, we keep food in the office so that no matter what someone's situation is, whether they're comfortable sharing or not, they know they can grab, for better or worse, like a ramen noodle packet, or they can grab like a meal from the boxes that we get from Costco that are like, you can just rip them up and like heat them up in the microwave. Just having those quick meals available so that people don't have to have the conversation of like, I don't know where my next meal is coming from, but they know it's available. Making sure that you provide that so that when people do take the time to join the movement with you and do the work, they have what they need to power themselves to do it. And it's not a huge lift to make sure that there's food there. And it's often the last thing you think of, but trying to switch your frame of reference of like, if you were hungry and you didn't have that, would you be able to do this work? And so asking yourself, does the person that you have coming to this event have everything that they need, just as you have everything you need to be able to be in the space, is the best advice I could give to anyone, especially if you're working with young people, because they come from so many different experiences with so many different needs. It may not be food. It may be a bed. It may be like clothes. It may be transportation. Like there's so many ways that you can meet people where they're at, and food is just the first step.
So good. Rudy, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I love that you curate this space where folks can come from different experiences and talk about coming together and how food impacts them. And not many people talk about that. But the second I was like, oh, I'm doing an interview about food today, everyone was so like, oh, what do you mean? What are they asking? And they wanted to engage in that. So please keep engaging folks, because it's something that folks don't really talk about very often. They think it's something that you just share with friends, but it's something that you can share in so many other ways.
Yes, thank you. Okay, you're booked for every episode.
Yes.